room, find out if anybody's got anything to talk about. Anybody got anything you want to talk about? Quick, go.
Gianforte Grand Street Theater, I would like to invite each and every one of you to a fabulous party. It's going to be held right in this building, April 9th. We're going to be launching our season. So Saturday, April 9th, we're going to have a wonderful party on the 6th floor, the 3rd floor, and the 2nd floor of the Montana Club. It'll be a wonderful evening full of performances. You should be there. You all should be there. We're going to announce our season, and we're going to offer the largest discounts you could ever possibly get on your season pass. Free. Almost free. Really close. So please, we do hope you join us for that. The tickets you can find on our website, grandstreettheater.com.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Go.
I'm Melinda from the Friendship Center this Tuesday at the Lewis and Clark County Fairgrounds. Empty bowls, best event ever. Tickets are $25. You can get them at the door or around town. We have Wilbur Raymond, we have amazing art, we have amazing soup, we have amazing soup servers. Many of them will be today. So please come on down Tuesday, 4:30 at the Fairgrounds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Go. John.
Good morning, John Moore with the Lawson Foundation, and on Sunday the 3rd, we're having, I put a few of these out, a benefit for Ashley Nelson at the Radisson Colonial. There'll be 17 different bands. It goes from 2 to 10, so there's plenty of opportunity to listen to some music, bid on some silent auction items, buy some raffle tickets, and enjoy the good times. Come on out Sunday, April 3rd at the Radisson.
Thanks, John. Anybody else? Go.
I'm Diane Carlson Evans. You all know that I'm a comrade in arms with General Prendergast. I don't know if most of you know that General Prendergast and his wife Katie, and his daughter Katie, his wife Kathy, and their 3 grandchildren were in a car and had a pretty serious car accident. And they were going to California. They didn't make it to California. They are home recovering. The car accident, the injuries didn't require hospitalization, but they're pretty shook up. It was by Carroll College, the Netton Avenue area. A very large pickup with, we used to call them kangaroo bars, cattle bars, rammed him from the back and hit the car in front. The car was totally smashed, and thankfully the gas tank didn't burst. The kids got out. It was pretty traumatic, and they are home recovering. General Prendergast sends his greetings to you, and we, of course, send our prayers and thoughts with them while they're home recovering. They're pretty shook up. So it was his whole family in that car, except for his son Michael. And Michael said, "Dad, I could have lost my whole family in minutes." So thank you.
And how was the thing yesterday?
Yesterday was wonderful. As you know, many of you know if you've read the paper, we had our commemorative event March 29th and 30th all across the United States. 21 states have passed a bill mandating that declaration of Vietnam Veterans Day. You know, we all have Veterans Day on November 11th, but there's a special day set aside for Vietnam veterans. Thanks so much to Governor Bullock and General Quinn and Ray Reid of the Military Museum. They sponsored this. Stand up, Vietnam veterans. Come on, let's honor our Vietnam veterans. All these updates about the vet centers. Vet Center coming to town that we haven't given up. We're still fighting for it, and we'll fight for it until we get one here in Helena. And thank you all for your wonderful support.
Thanks. Anybody else? Anybody else? Go.
Speaking of the military museum, it is open today. This is Thursday, and anybody that hasn't seen it is missing a great chance of seeing everything from the Lewis and Clark expedition on through to, I think we got it now, we're going into Vietnam War this way bridge. But you'll be seeing this poster out. It's for the 19th annual blind fair. So far we have raised $140,000 for them in the 19 years we've been doing it. And it's going to be a new location, but we really haven't worn our way. We've always had it at the Shrine Club, but not this year. It's going to be at the Gateway Center at 1710 National Avenue. Much much easier parking, easier getting to, and believe me, it'll be a great time. We'll have great food, great music. You can get tickets. They're $20 in advance, 25 at the door. You can get them, well, I'll have to read. Because sometimes they change. Opportunity Bank, Panhandler, Leslie's Hallmark, which has now got 2 locations in one of them, that's changed out of the Capitol Mall into right across the street on 11th Street. First Security Bank and the Staggering Ox at Muncie Center. You'll see these. There'll be more reports, believe me, before this comes. This is May 13th, Friday, May 13th, so I've got a lot of weeks to stand.
Thanks, Lauren. Anybody else? Go.
John Murray from Downtown Helena Incorporated. We're the nonprofit organization that brings you 14 free Alive at Fives every year. Our music gets better every year, but we're still short a few sponsors this year. So if you're an organization that feels like you want to sponsor or partially sponsor one of the events, please get a hold of us at Downtown Helena. Or if you're an individual that likes Alive at Five and wants to join as a friend of Alive at Five, you can actually contribute personally and have your name on a banner there and your picture too. Thanks to Dave. Thank you.
Good, you mentioned. Anybody else? Go, Bruce.
Good morning, everyone. Greg, thanks for being here with us this morning. At the Historical Society tonight, we have a free program. It's Insurgent Democracy, the Nonpartisan League in North American Politics. And if you want to know what that means, you're going to have to show up, like I am, so I can learn what it means. I also want to remind you of the exhibit that we've got from the heart, Stan Line's Comic Creations. It's a really great exhibit of the life and work of our Helena legend, Stan Line. Please come see that. And don't forget to see one of the greatest collections of Charles M. Russell art in America. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Anybody else? Leo? I read a piece in the paper this morning, but where are we at on that? Where are you headed? Well, some of you are headed to jail. Good thing. That's the good news. The bad news is I don't have any room. We're overcrowded this morning. The population in your jail is a total of 127, 91 in that facility. I can tell you, we're really designed to be at 58. I welcome you for a tour. I know I've told you that before, but come by. Sincerely, come by, and we'll take you for a tour. We'll let you eat lunch there. Cannot talk to commissioners into eating lunch there, but you can. Those are the things that are right on the tip of the spear about are we safe. We haven't been sued because we're actively looking at it. We're actively engaging the partners, much like the schools, about what do we do. And we can't build our way out of this crisis. In other words, just building a facility isn't the solution. The solution is a combined building and having services available. And I know some people say, put them in there and throw away the key. I got to tell you, 95% of the people in your detention facility have not had a trial. So if you want to suspend the Constitution, please let me know. You might have a fight on your hands, but until that time, I got to follow that document. Not only got to, I want to. So those are the issues about having humane treatment and making sure that the guards aren't assaulted. Come in, see what they work with. I've been working with the papers to see what it's like. So it's been exciting. I don't know how much time we got there, but I do have something. That's enough.
You know, every other time I get up to talk, you're saying, go, go, go. God bless you. See ya.
Brian?
Leo, why don't you put them up at your place?
The same reason you don't put them up at your place.
Anybody else got any words of wisdom? Anybody else got anything like to talk about? Where we at? Go. Where? Lisa.
I wasn't eating. It's spring break, I've got nothing to say.
Good, he has nothing to say. Anybody else got anything? Go.
He's not new to Helena, but I did want to point out, I see Russ Cargo, who's the CEO of Helena Industries here today, and he's been there just about a year now, and he's done fabulous work in his own.
Good. Good, thanks for being here. Anybody else? Nobody else, huh? Well, are you ready? Anyway, we got a special guest with us this morning. Republican candidate for the governor of the state of Montana, Greg Gianforte. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, and it's great to see you. Thanks for welcoming me to Helena. So my home is Bozeman. My wife and I have raised our 4 kids there. I fell in love with Montana 40 years ago. I had a World War II vet that was a junior high school science teacher, and he fell in love with Montana when he was training up in Maelstrom. And the only way he could come to Montana was to load up 2 van loads of 9th graders. We drove all the way from Pennsylvania to Red Lodge, and then spent the whole summer in the backcountry. My second trip to Montana, I was in college. I took the train from Philadelphia to West Glacier, and then hiked all the way from Spotted Bear to Lincoln. And a buddy and I did. So spent a lot of time in the backcountry, spent a lot of time out in our public lands. Really enjoyed it. So I want to just introduce myself this morning, talk a little bit about what I would focus on when I'm your next governor, and then happy to spend most of the time for a Q&A, just talk to you about what's on your mind, hear what's up. So again, my wife and I have raised our 4 kids. We have 3 boys and a girl. They're 26 to 20. Our little baby girl just went off to college. She was born in Bozeman. She just went off to college last year. She takes after her mother, who, I'm sorry, Susan's not here with me today. We've been married almost 28 years. But little Rachel, she's like her mother because she's smart. She got a perfect 36 on her ACTs, and 1 of 2 in the state when she graduated. And she broke my heart because she left the state to go to college. She went to Stanford to study computer science, so maybe she got that from me. But funny thing happened her freshman year. She comes home in spring break, and she says, "Dad, there's a rumor about me going around campus." And I said, "Rachel, that doesn't sound very good. What is that?" And she said, "Well, they know I'm from Montana, and they're telling everybody that I killed a bear with my bare hands." And again, I said my daughter's smart. I said, "Rachel," and I'm thinking at this point, like, yes, this is the perfect rumor. What did you tell him? And she says, "Well, I told him it wasn't true. I told him I had gloves on." I was quite proud of her. But I'm an electrical engineer by training. My master's is in computer science. My wife has a bachelor's and master's and a master's in mechanical engineering. So we're kind of all engineering all the time in our house. 3 of our 4 kids are engineers now. We had this idea. I've started 5 technology businesses, and when we started the last business in Bozeman, we had this idea that the internet potentially removes geography as a constraint in where you locate a business. And we thought it might be possible to create a global business in a rural place like Montana. And yet, people there told us that's not possible. My wife and I started in an extra room in our home. We had no outside capital, just a pad of paper and a phone, literally. And what we learned was that when you combine the Montana work ethic with good leadership, just about anything's possible. And you know part of that story. The company was called Right Now Technologies, and it grew over 15 years to 1,100 employees. We were publicly traded. We traded on Wall Street starting in 2004. We were publicly traded for 8 years. We became Bozeman's largest commercial employer. I had the good fortune of hiring Steve Gaines when we were about 100 employees. We worked together for 12 years in the business. But the thing that's really cool about that business, it was a software business, and we were one of the first cloud application businesses. And then in 2012, Oracle purchased that business, and now they're the largest commercial employer in Bozeman. And they continue to expand there. Every employee that wanted a job got a job. And in fact, we're building a new building. Oracle now has 120,000 square feet of office space. We're building a new building for them. They just signed a 10-year lease. And we're building a building that has a special purpose room. It's a global command center for all their data centers globally. It's a 5,000 square foot room with 12-foot ceilings and high definition TVs all the way around. And for 8 hours every day, Bozeman's going to be the global command center for all of Oracle's data centers. They have one in Singapore, there's one in London, England. The only one in North America is in Bozeman, Montana. So I think that's kind of cool. You know, and they've recognized this Montana work ethic, just as many people do. So, but the coolest thing about that whole experience was that that business we started in our home started an economic engine that resulted in a lot of prosperity in Gallatin Valley. If you've been down there, you know, when we started, Main Street, there were retail shops boarded up, and we don't have that issue anymore. In fact, in 2014, according to the University of Montana, 40% of all the wage growth in the entire state occurred in Gallatin County. Because when you bring a high-wage job into a community, the first thing the family does is buy or build a home, right? So that creates construction jobs and real estate jobs and restaurant and retail jobs. So it spreads prosperity. And that's the thing I'm probably most proud of, is that we've created different outcomes. And we like Bozeman. I know there's different opinions around the state of Bozeman. I always like to say that, you know, at least it's close to the rest of Montana. And that's what I've been doing, really traveling the state. I just got done with a 61 city tour, or 61, let's say, town tour. We went from Ekalaka to Eureka, and almost every place in between. Baker, Webo, Plentywood, Scobie. We went to Scobie. We had over 10% of the population of Scobie show up. I beat that record and win it. We had almost 20% of the population show up and win it, which the bar is lower there. And we learned a lot of things. Basically, listening sessions. We call this our regulation roundup. And one of the things, the lesson we learned from that whole Right Now Technologies experience, at least it's part of my worldview, is that if Montana has one need, it's that we're 49th in the country in wages, and too many of our young people are leaving. And we need more high-wage jobs. And we've demonstrated that better is possible in Montana. But the success we enjoyed didn't come from a government program. It didn't come from any kind of handout. It came from hard work and good leadership and faith that we could do it, and perseverance. And I firmly believe that. And I believe that we could do more to create more opportunities for others. And that's why I'm running for governor. As a dad, I want my 4 kids around the table on Sunday afternoon. And I don't want to have to get on an airplane to go see my grandkids' ball games or recitals. And yet, if we don't have a strong private sector that allows individual small business people to succeed and create opportunities for others, that's not going to be possible. But today, we're 49th in the country, and our kids have become our most precious export. And that's a challenge. So I think there's a path forward there, and that's why I'm doing it. We've been, our family's been incredibly blessed. We've shown that people can prosper here in Montana. It's a joy for us to share the prosperity we've been blessed with, but we also feel a deep sense of obligation to give back and to serve. And if Montanans want us, right? So, and want me. So that's the proposition I put forward, but that's not my decision, it's yours. So hopefully we'll get to know each other, we can figure it out. So I'm just going to make a few minutes of comments, and then I'd love to have Q&A with you about whatever's on your mind. So the 4 things I would focus on when I'm governor is, number 1, we need more high-wage jobs. That's number 1. Now they come in a couple of different flavors. I'm kind of a fan of all of the above. If you look at the U.S. Department of Labor data, average wages by industry, the number 1 opportunity, the number 1 industry in the U.S. for wages is natural resources. And yet today, and Montana's rich in natural resources. That's why we're the treasure state. I believe we can responsibly develop our natural resources, preserve the environment, and create livelihoods at the same time. The biggest issue is I've met with the mining community, the timber community, people in coal, is that they're getting strangled by federal regulations. I believe we need an administration that's willing to stand up for Montana's 10th Amendment rights and push back on the federal overreach that's strangling our natural resources. Nobody cares more about the environment in Montana than Montanans. We don't need Washington bureaucrats telling us how to do that. So that's number 1. Number 2, we need to, manufacturing represents a good opportunity for us. Agriculture is our number 1 industry. This is why I was so thrilled. You may have seen I announced my Lieutenant Governor running mate, Leslie Robinson. Leslie Robinson, just to introduce her quickly, is 4th generation Montanan from the High Line. She's a rancher. She was the youngest woman ever elected to the Montana Stock Growers Board. She's been a county commissioner for 11 years. She's been on the front line of a lot of the land use issues with the BLM up there. She's been elected to MACO, the Montana Association of Counties, and she's also been elected to leadership at the national level in NACO, the National Association of Counties. So she's respected amongst her peers, and she's huge in the ag community. I think she's a great compliment for my background, being a techie and a business person. She's a rancher and a mother, and she's going to represent those here. And as I've traveled around Montana, I'll tell you, rural Montana doesn't feel like they've had a voice in Helena in a long time. So Leslie's going to be that voice for both local municipalities and for rural Montana. So jobs is number one. It's natural resources, it's ag, it's manufacturing. Maybe I'm a little biased, but I think that technology represents an opportunity for us. I don't know if you know, but there's now 260 high-tech firms in Montana. You have SoFi here in town. We now have 80 technology businesses in Bozeman. There's 80 in Missoula. U of M just did a study recently. Do you know that sector, although it's hidden, because it tends to be in office parks places, they don't sell to people in the state. So it's nearly an invisible industry, but it's already 15% of our state economy. And it's growing 8 times faster than the rest of the economy. That's a good thing, because it's creating jobs that are double the state median. So I think that's something we should encourage. I also think that the internet changes the rules. It used to be that if somebody wanted to get a job here in Helena, they had to find an employer here in Helena. Well, there's many firms now that don't care where their employees work. And I think about the rural agricultural communities around the state. I was just up in Saco up on the High Line. You know, they only have 44 kids in their school now, K through 12. I counted 15 full-time staff. You know, that's a challenge economically to preserve that. But when they lose that school, they're going to lose most of the community. We've got to find a way to bring more livelihoods into that community, to stop exporting our kids. I think telecommuting is one of the best opportunities. That's why we launched a program last summer. We invited thousands of Montanans to come home and bring a job with them. And because you can do it now. Oracle, the company that purchased our business, if you go on their website today, they have 1,000 jobs open that could be filled in any community in Montana if you have an internet connection and a phone. And they average about $100,000 a year. Imagine in Saco if we could get half a dozen kids to come home and bring a $75,000 a year job with them. That'd be half a dozen homes built or constructed, there'd be more families in the schools, people shopping downtown. We can do this. So jobs is number one. Number two is education. We've got to prepare our young people for the jobs of the future. This is why I started with a gentleman in Bozeman a program called Code Montana, which provides curriculum to all middle school and high school kids in the state to learn computer science. I'm thrilled to report that that demand creation program has resulted in an increased enrollment at Montana State University of 54% in the last 2 years. We're going to continue to drive that because although high-tech firms create jobs for people of all stripes, if you don't have the techies are sort of like the seed is to a farmer. If you don't have them, you don't get the rest of the crop. And in 2013, we only had 40 computer science grads in the whole state, across U of M, MSU, and Tech combined, 40. So we were, and my estimate is the industry in the state could absorb about 400 a year, and we're producing 40. So we're off by 10x. But we can change that, and we're making progress. I also believe in education that we push too many of our young people into four-year degree programs. And as I talk to contractors and manufacturers, they can't find people with skilled labor. I'm a huge proponent of our two-year system. That's why we started a manufacturing scholarship program. We've had 300 people go through it so far, and we've seen changed lives. In fact, I ran into a gentleman up on the Flathead Valley Community College last fall, and he came up to me and he says, Mr. Gianforte, I want to thank you for the scholarship. And it was only $1,000, but it paid half of his tuition to get a welding certificate. And this young man said to me, I have to tell you my story. He says, I'm growing up here in Montana. I'm the first one in my family to ever graduate from high school. I'm 22 years old. I'm married, and I have 2 little girls. And then he stood up a little taller, looked me in the eye, and said, you know, I'm learning how to weld so I can put a roof over their heads. And we owe Montanans an opportunity to thrive here. But it's not going to happen in low-wage jobs. They've got to acquire skills that can do this. And I think trades education is a great path for some. and we ought to be doing more to encourage that. So it's jobs, education. Number 3 is, I firmly believe we have some issues in our state government. And I think we need to bring increased accountability to state government and also more of a culture of customer service. As I traveled the state, I've heard over and over again that people say when they interact with state agencies, and let me say clearly, there's probably many state employees here, that I think we have good workers at the state level. I think they want to do the right thing. I will also say, I don't think they're led well today. Because leadership doesn't exist. And I hear over and over again from the citizens that they feel like they encounter a culture of enforcement rather than customer service when they interact with state agencies. And that's what happens with organizations when they don't have a clear vision about what their purpose is and how they serve people. They tend to hide behind rule books. So I have made the commitment that when I'm governor, one of the primary levers I can pull is agency head appointments. And I've committed that I will appoint agency heads who have actually walked in the shoes of the people they're trying to serve. I look at an example, our permitting process that we've seen. It is outrageous. To think that we could take, as a state, $86 million from a corporation for mineral rights on a piece of land and then never grant them the permit to dig the ore out of the ground, and that company's forced into bankruptcy and then has to tuck tail and leave the state, is not a welcome mat for someone else who's going to invest here. Or I was just up in the Montanore mine this last week. You know, they're out trying to raise money to create jobs up there. And it took us 11 years to not give them a permit. I don't think we should grant every permit, but I do think we should be able to say yes or no a lot faster than a decade. Unfortunately, maybe has become the new no at Department of Environmental Quality, and we need new leadership there. I talked to ranchers, and the same thing's true with DNRC. I personally believe we ought to have a landowner in charge of DNRC. And I think there's good people working in the Department of Labor, but I think we need a head of the Department of Labor who's actually had an employee before. Because I think that would be common sense. And that's the sort of leadership I've always brought to things. Now, when we were publicly traded, I had to sign our financials every 90 days. And basically say, if I screwed up the financials, I would go to jail. And that's what the SEC required. And I signed that letter, my CFO and I, every 90 days for 8 years. And yet, and we used to joke that, I know you wouldn't have any room for a sheriff, but if we did screw it up, we'd have side-by-side cells. Probably in your jail, we'd probably have the same cell. Yet, we have a current administration here in Helena that last year lost $1 billion off our balance sheet, 125 accounting errors, and not only did nobody go to jail, nobody lost their job, nobody even got reprimanded. There's a hypocrisy associated with a different set of rules, depending whether we're in the public sector or the private sector. And we need to bring some accountability back, and I will work to do that. Respecting the fact that we have dedicated, hardworking state employees that are not led well today. So it's jobs, it's education, it's accountability and a culture of customer service. And then lastly, we need to work together on healthcare. We now have 1 in 7 people in the state of Montana works in healthcare. It's up from 1 in 11 just 20 years ago. And costs are spiraling out of control. And we need good quality healthcare. I think the principle here is we need quality healthcare. We have to deliver access, particularly for our rural communities, but we've got to get costs down. And there are ways we can do this. I take St. Vincent's as an example. They just released a new app, Doctor on Demand, which, I don't know if you know, but 85% of hospital room visits could have been diagnosed over the phone. And when you come into a hospital, you're going to run up a bill of $2,500 if you go into the emergency room versus a $40 visit on a cell phone that could have taken care of 85%. Not that that's going to place all of this, but you then take a family who's in a ranch house 100 miles from a hospital and a $40 visit that can be done in 5 minutes versus a round trip that ends up costing $2,500. You just got better quality at a lower cost with better access. I think we ought to be looking at more things like this. And I will say, I played football in high school, and we had a championship team. I had a guy on my team go play for the Steelers, and one go play for the Eagles. And the way we won games was not throwing Hail Mary passes. And I brought this kind of into my leadership style. We won games by running 3 to 5 yard plays over and over again. So the input I'm looking from everybody I talk to about is whether it's education policy or tax policy or administration. I'm looking for 3 to 5 yard plays, and we're putting playbooks together in these various areas, because I think that when you throw Hail Marys, boy, everybody gets all, they stand up in the stadium and they start sweating. And usually the ball hits the ground, and then it goes the other way on the field. And I just think we have to clearly identify the principle that we're trying to achieve in a given area, and then run 3 to 5 yard plays. I also think, and I'll just kind of finish up with this and then take questions, we've had way too much divisiveness in Montana, within parties and across parties. And you'll notice in my comments that I haven't used any label, because I think when you call somebody a name, it has a great potential to offend and to polarize. And the fact that Montana is 49th in the country in wages, and our kids are leaving, is not a Democrat issue, it's not a Republican issue, it's a Montana issue. And we need to get people around the table to have substantive, robust conversations. And in my experience as a business person, I've always found that the more robust the conversation is, the better the outcome is. But you have to be willing to have that and listen. So that's what I've been doing. I've done hundreds and hundreds of meetings all over the state. I've been collecting input, and I look forward to hearing what's on your mind. I will say, just finally, we care deeply about this state. It's our adopted home. We've raised our family here. We've shown that we can prosper here. And that's what's driving me. That I would like to see Montana reach its full potential. And if I can contribute and have a hand in that, that would be something I'd love to do. So, love to hear what's on your mind.
Questions? Anybody have?
Where did you get your figures, 85% of cases to be, medical cases to be diagnosed on the phone? I would challenge that.
Yeah, well, I have a gentleman, MD friend in Bozeman, Elliot Justin, who outsourced hospital emergency rooms on a commercial basis. He built that business. I think he was doing it for 25 hospitals around the U.S., and it's his figure from personal experience in those hospitals.
I've never seen that justified in the article in a big journal, national.
Yeah, he sold that business for $40 million last year. He's operating those hospitals. Yes?
Big Blue has this artificial intelligence computer. Stanford adopted it. It diagnoses, a patient comes in, accuracy is 98%. The average doctor is correct 70% of the time. In other words, they're wrong 30%. Artificial intelligence, and without lab tests.
I'm not proposing to get rid of doctors. But I do think technology represents an opportunity in every area, because it allows us to be more efficient and have better outcomes. Yeah.
In your, one of your 4 points about healthcare, where does mental health stand in that? And what's part of your plan to increase the accessibility and the support for mental health in this state? Because one of the sad truths about what Montana does nationally is we lead the nation in suicide. So,
yeah. And it's particularly an issue amongst our vets. We lose a vet every 36 hours in the state of Montana. So we've personally been involved in some programs to try and help there. I mean, it's a big problem. Again, I go back to the principle in any particular problem. And in a particular case of people in need, I will say very clearly, I believe our society has an obligation to take care of people that can't take care of themselves. And we need to have services to help in that regard. I don't have all the answers. I've assembled a group of, it's over a dozen people in the medical profession that have been providing input. I know Bill Kennedy, the county commissioner over in Yellowstone County, his primary focus is on mental health and I'm still learning and collecting input. So if that's an area you're working on, I'm asking for your input. Again, I'm looking for 3 to 5 yard plays that we can execute that actually allows us to fulfill our obligations to society and take care of people who can't take care of themselves. I do think, I will say, part of the suicide issue, and I don't have all the answers here, but I know financial stress often adds to the frustration people have, and a stronger economy and a job helps in that regard. Now, that doesn't deal with the underlying health issues, but we can remove stress from a lot of households with a stronger economy as well. Yeah.
Dive a little deeper, if you would, into our natural resources, extractive industries versus the global concern for the environment.
Yeah, so we have to balance it. I mean, I think we have to look, in any particular case, there's no absolute rule. You're not going to find me, completely on one side or on the other side. You're going to look at the benefit and the cost of any given project and make a determination. Not digging any ore out of the ground is not the answer. Digging all the ore out of the ground is not the answer.
How about coal strip?
Yeah, so the question is coal strip. I've been very clear. We put 1,000 years of coal strip carbon into the air just in 1 year of forest fires in Montana. Even the EPA has said that shutting coal strip down would have negligible impact on the atmosphere. I'm a proponent of continuing to operate coal strip, letting it compete on an economic basis with other sources of energy. We need to do it cleanly, and I think we can. There's no question, if we apply American ingenuity to burning coal cleanly, just like fracking fixed our lack of oil and gas, we can burn coal cleanly.
Does Montana have enough bandwidth to do all that technical operation, particularly in the rural areas?
That's a really good question, because there's a honestly, I would say a myth that we don't have enough bandwidth. Back June, I went to 60 communities talking about telecommuting. The interesting thing I found, if you go to Chinook, Malta, Fort Benton, White Sulphur Springs, North Havre, there's 1 gigabit fiber in every home. And it turns out rural Montana is better wired than Helena or Bozeman or Missoula. In large part because they are run by these rural telephone co-ops. They get the universal service dollars from our telephone bills, and they've been good stewards of that money. They've been burying fiber everywhere. My son, who's the head geek in our family, he found out White Sulphur Springs had 1 gigabit fiber in every home. He's ready to move up there, which would be a good thing for White Sulphur Springs. And when we started our business in Bozeman, we had this is the other side of this, we had 1 wire going down to Denver, and it got cut by backhoe about every 6 weeks. And on top of that infrastructure, we built one of the top 100 websites in the world. We had 8 million visitors a day. So I think if you ask a farmer if he wants a bigger tractor, the answer is always going to be yes. If you ask a telecommuter, does he want more bandwidth, the answer is always going to be yes. But I think it's a question of what is sufficient. Montana today is the #1 state in the country for telecommuting. 7.1% of our population works remotely for an RSD company. So the pump is primed. We just need to encourage more of it, and as we get more demand for bandwidth, supply will follow. Yes?
A couple of weeks ago, our speaker here in hometown Helena was a gentleman and spoke to us about the Clean Power Act and implementation of the EPA's rule. And it was an interesting presentation, and I asked him about what, if we are controlling clean air here in Montana and the United States, but all of our coal is going to China where there is unregulated and they are continuing to use dirty power. Doesn't that give those businesses in China and outside of the United States a huge economic advantage because they can produce their cars, their metal, all the hard things that get produced, less cost because their energy is less costful than it is here in Montana where we have to play by the rules. Can you speak to that?
Yes.
Right.
I mean, anytime you put a finger on the scale, you're going to get a different outcome. I think that coal ought to compete with wind and solar on an equal basis, but there's a regulatory attack on coal right now. And I would rather see the U.S. lead in clean coal technology. It's another area where I think technology should be applied. There's no question in my mind. I was just at the energy conference over in Billings yesterday. There's 650 people there. There's technology there to clean up coal before it's burned, to sequester CO2. There's technology available. If we used American ingenuity, I think we could do it very well and keep the advantage American. Yes?
What do you think the role of the Department of Commerce will be in achieving your vision, or what changes would you make there?
Yeah, so the question is, what role does the Department of Commerce have? I think the role of government in business is to make it easier for small businesses to get started and to thrive here. As I talk to small business people, they're dying a death of 1,000 cuts. There's no one thing, but they're bleeding to death. I know a number of contractors in the Gallatin Valley who used to have teams of 8 or 12 people working for them. And because of the amount of paperwork involved in having employees, they're now sole proprietors working by themselves. I think the Department of Commerce, I don't believe we need more government programs. If we just make it easier for people to get started and grow, that's the primary role. I think there's an advocacy role as well in dealing with companies that might locate here. I'm not a fan of corporate welfare and special give-outs and grant programs and these sorts of things, because I think entrepreneurs ought to compete on an equal basis. Again, advocacy. And I'm also, the other thing is we have to realize if we want, my view is that jobs and opportunities are only created in the private sector. They're not created by government programs. But to have a private sector, we need entrepreneurs. Well, we need people to decide that they're going to start a business. So this is why I spent a lot of time in high schools and middle schools talking about entrepreneurship. I was the entrepreneur in residence over here at Carroll College last year, which was really a fun exercise. But what's really troubling to me is when I go in, I was in Butte Central here recently, and I had 200 high school students. And I asked, how many of you have ever thought of starting your own business? And like no hands went up. If we don't have young people thinking about starting businesses, we're not going to have a private sector. And then my message was really simple. It was, don't let anybody ever tell you anything's impossible. You can start a business, and you can prosper in Montana. And these kids came alive, and they're asking questions. Mr. Gianforte, that prosper thing, could you go over that one more time? How do we do that? And I was encouraged by that. And so, as I talk to kids on college campuses and high schools, oftentimes they're staring at a hill and they don't know how to get to the top of it. And I think my whole campaign is about opportunity and potential. And boy, that's resonating with young people because they want opportunity and potential. They just don't know how to get it. And entrepreneurship is part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. You said you'd like to push back at the federal government in various ways. One way in which some people want to do that is by stopping refugees, specifically refugees from Syria, Muslim refugees, coming to Montana. Is that something you would support? And can you be specific about exactly how you would do that?
Yeah, so I am opposed to refugee settlement here. I think that my heart goes out to those. I think we have a refugee problem today primarily because of a lack of leadership in Washington. I feel we have an obligation as a society to help, but it doesn't include settling them here.
What would you do?
You know, I have to look at it. I don't have a specific answer for you now. But I do know I've had a chance now to meet with about 20 sitting governors around the U.S. And we've had dialogue there. And a lot of these issues that we're facing, the biggest theme I'm hearing as I travel is federal government overreach, whether it's refugees, waters of the U.S., clean power plants, sage-grouse, plover. I mean, make your list of federal overreach issues. And
sorry, how is accepting refugees an example of federal overreach?
It's being dictated by Obama's resettlement plan. It's coming from the federal level.
Each state should get to set its own refugee policy.
I'm making a different point, which is it's not hard to make a list of issues that represent federal overreach, which honestly is troubling to a majority of Montanans, at least in my experience traveling around the state, having done hundreds of meetings. And the point with the other governors is there is power in unity in a common front against this federal overreach. So one of the things, to try and answer your question, one of the things I would do is collaborate with other states where we have common cause to push back on the overreach. Yeah.
Because you were a strong opponent of the ordinance that was adopted in Bozeman, the non-discrimination ordinance, and you and organizations you fund successfully defeated the adoption of a non-discrimination ordinance in the city of Billings. So could we expect legislation like was recently adopted in Georgia and North Carolina in a Gianforte administration in Montana?
So I've been very clear. Discrimination is wrong.
It is.
I think people should be hired and promoted based on their ability and capabilities. That's the way we ran our business. I do not agree with the way our current governor adopted this discrimination executive order recently, but I do agree with the sentiment of it. And I would run the state the same way I ran our business.
You haven't spoken to the issue about anti-LGBT legislation in Montana. Would you encourage legislation similar to that, which was recently enacted in North Carolina and Georgia?
I believe discrimination is wrong. And my focus in my administration is on the fact that we're 49th in the country in wages, and we're going to focus on economic issues. Yes?
One of the things that, as you know, drives companies resettling maybe in Montana is quality of life. Can you talk about the role that you see, the importance that you would place on Montana state support of the arts and culture, and specifically with support of the Montana Arts Council, the Montana Film Office, and the Montana Historical Society?
So that's a long list. I'm not sure I have the details on all of them. I will say I'm a huge supporter of the arts. I mean, our family has been the primary sponsor of Shakespeare in the Park for the last 5 years, I think. We help underwrite the symphony and the opera in Bozeman. So I'm a big supporter of the arts. I do think these should primarily be supported from the private sector, and I'm happy to lead the way in doing that.
Under your administration, would you see a decrease in funding to the Arts Council?
You know, I don't have the details. I think I'm a fan. I think the arts adds a quality of life that is highly desirable, and we ought to pursue it.
Yeah. You mentioned education as a strong factor. What's your stance on charter schools and why?
Yeah. So, good question on education. I think that I always go back to the principle in each area. In an education, I think we could probably agree our goal has to be how do we help every child reach their full potential? That's got to be the goal. We also have, as you look at the landscape in Montana, we have two different worlds. We have rural Montana, and then we have our bigger communities. So let me just talk about each of those briefly, because I think different education policies are required there. In rural Montana, I mentioned Saco earlier, where there's 44 kids in the high school. If we follow the principle, how do we help every child reach their full potential? My concern for a small rural community is that the next Einstein is born there, and we don't have a great physics or calculus teacher. I think part of the solution for rural Montana is our existing digital academy to make more AP classes available digitally in these rural communities, because it's unrealistic to think we're going to have a world-class physics teacher in every rural community in Montana. But we can through digital delivery. I think that represents an opportunity to provide more AP classes. It also allows us to do more dual credit in these rural communities. And I'd be in favor of additional investment in the digital academy to do that. In our larger communities, again, the goal has to be how do we help every single child reach their full potential. I do personally believe that parents know what's best for their kids, and I'm a fan of increased options for parents in how they educate their kids. Now, you mentioned charter schools. I don't know that charter schools is the right answer for every community. Certainly in a small community, economics don't support multiple schools. And a charter school is another public school. We don't need public schools in a small community. That's why digital academies rurally. But in our larger communities, I think other options help parents. So, yeah.
2 questions.
I know this is going to be hard.
Greg was on our show, and he also did a show on your fine Petrarch Academy that you support.
Yeah.
You just mentioned sage grouse. What is your assessment? You mentioned in the context of federal overreach.
Yeah.
What's your sense for the sage grouse issue and the resolution of it? That's my first question.
Yeah. So, again, I'll start by have all the answers, but as I've looked at it, there's a couple of things that are troubling to me. We did avoid listing of the sage grouse, but we did relinquish development rights on an awful lot of Montana land. That's somewhat troubling. I also think that in many of these cases, the only predator that we're managing is man. And if our goal is really more sage grouse, which we're all in favor of more sage grouse, I think we ought to have specific goals, which BLM has been unable to identify. They have no specific goals for what's the right number of sage grouse. I don't know how you hit a target if you don't have a goal. And there's been an unwillingness to deal with predators other than man. So I'm glad we avoided listing. I think we could have done better.
Second question relates to my experience at the Fine Academy that you support, Petrarch. At that school, if I got it right, and you had a brilliant student there being interviewed, you teach the theory of creative design and the theory of Darwinian evolution, and have it sort of on even scientific terms and have the students explore and evaluate that. Do you recommend that curriculum for public schools?
I think in our schools, we ought to be teaching kids how to think, not what to think. And I think a robust set of ideas ought to be presented without bias.
Does that, to push for a specific answer to my question, that sounds like you're saying the theory of intelligent design and the Darwinian theory of evolution should be taught on equal terms, as is done in Petrarch, and the students taught to evaluate those doctrines on their merits. Do I understand?
I haven't made a statement about that at all. I think we
I'm
ought to, and I believe the principle ought to be, we should be teaching our kids how to think, not what to think.
Including
Yes, sir.
science.
While we're on education, I'm Ken Colton, superintendent of schools. We're pretty proud of public education, and I know you can talk back and forth with some of your stance on that here. A couple of things. I agree with two-year colleges. I think it's a great option. I think all options, business, career, and college are made for all kids. And I'd love to sit down and I see that you're open for input. Sit down and talk about our relationship with Helena with our two-year college that we have here, which is fantastic.
Yep.
Right now, we have about 300 kids in our high schools that are attending our two-year college. It's phenomenal. And so, just to get that in there. I know public education is hit hard and where we are, and like you said, it's up to a parent choice. I'd love you to sit down and see all the times that we sit down and parents look at us to see what's best for their kids. But with education, my fear is that we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I would rather public education be held to a higher standard by whoever that is, and let us focus on what we have, because public education is the hope and the great equalizer for all of our country. It's true.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a couple of success stories we've had in Helena. 4 years ago, we were one of the lower double A. We talk about the big districts in education. We turned that around. We just learned a couple weeks ago that we're #1 school at writing across the state, according to the ACT. And that's something that we can do when we want to. It's awesome when you do that, and I'm pretty proud of that. In math, we did the same thing. 47% more of our fifth graders are ready for honors math than they were a couple years ago. So what I'm saying is, when we go into this, please work with us as we do this, because there are good things happening in public education.
Yeah. There's no question. Yesterday I was in the Career Center in Billings. I spent time with Scott Anderson over there, the principal, and they're doing fabulous things. I'm a huge supporter of public education. There's no scenario where the vast majority of our kids don't go to public schools.
Yeah.
And we need to have quality there. And the goal has to be, how do we help every child reach their full potential?
And I agree. And I think one thing we lose in this is, remember, education, especially public education, is not a business. Mainly because we can't control our resources when they come through the door. And I know you understand that. Please, as I hear you say you want to talk to people with Pete and mental health, please talk to him. But I'd love to come and show you what's happening in Helena.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm back.
As governor, would you advocate and ask to defund Planned Parenthood and end abortion?
Yeah, so I am running because we're 49th in the country in wages, and I'm going to focus on helping keep our kids here in the state.
What about keeping our kids alive?
I am pro-life, and I think life is precious and needs to be preserved. My focus is on economic stuff. Yes.
want to get back to Dennis Taylor's question. You talked about non-discrimination, and I know you want to focus on economics, but I'm curious if you were governor, if you would pass a bill, you would sign a bill such as the governor signed in North Carolina. And again, I think I understand the focus on economics, but obviously in Indiana and North Carolina, that's have an economic, or will have an economic impact. So I'm curious, a yes or no answer to whether you would sign such a bill.
Yeah, I think discrimination is wrong, and we should not tolerate it.
But would you sign that bill like the governor did, if the bill happened to be like that in Montana?
Yeah, discrimination is wrong. Yes.
Infrastructure is a big discussion. And infrastructure is one of those areas where government really has a responsibility, but it's also potentially a big job creator as well. And in Montana, we've had several times in the legislature infrastructure bills which would have created a huge number of jobs and opportunities that were defeated, I think rather perniciously, but they were defeated. Is that something that you would support, to be strong and be a strong advocate for improvement of the infrastructure in Montana, which is decaying? We see it in the schools, we see it in the public sector and so forth. So
yeah, so we have not kept our commitment on infrastructure here in Helena. And you know, the current governor vetoed a bill in 2013. There was a lack of leadership in a number of places in the 15th session. You know, in Culbertson, a water bill on a single-family home is $1,200 a year, and it's going up 18% this year. And that's because of a lack of leadership here in Helena. So I think we need to fund infrastructure. Now, it's not going to be a blank check for these communities, but it's got to be a matching grant program. I would like to, I'm going to make that a priority in this next session. In terms of how we spend, I mean, we've overcharged Montana taxpayers. We have a pile of almost $500 million sitting up here. I personally think if we put some of that back in people's pockets, we'll be better off. So I'm a proponent. There were 3 tax reduction bills put on the governor's desk last time that he vetoed. At a minimum, that tax simplification bill, which would have reduced state income tax and reduced the cap gains, and it only cost about $20 million a year. I would have signed that bill. I think I also said very clearly, I think the business equipment tax is one of the most regressive taxes we have. I will work to eliminate it, and we have to phase it out over time. And then we need to fund infrastructure. You can do all of that and still have a $200 million surplus.
What's your status on the management of public lands?
Yeah, so the question is about public lands. I'm a huge fan of access. In fact, I had a hour-long interview with Randy Newberg last week that just aired. We talked a lot about public lands. Last time I checked in my freezer, I had 8 species of animals in there. And so I'm a big, I think that we need to preserve access to public lands. I don't think that I would oppose any plan that jeopardize public access to public lands. I do think the state could probably do a better job managing some of our federal lands because they're not getting managed today, but I oppose deed transfer to the state. I think there's some pilot projects that allow us to actually get a little more state control and actually have a better outcome. Because we manage our forests. You know, we're going to have healthier forests, we're going to have more wildlife, we're going to have better hunting opportunities, we're going to have less forest fires, and we'll actually have some timber going to our mills so some of our smaller communities can get some economic benefit again.
Would you consider forming a state bank like North Dakota? I think that would be the biggest driver of our economy and keep and protect this pot of gold we're talking about, $500 million, I believe you said.
You know, I haven't looked at it.
I'm concerned about the bail-in, bail-out situation since the big banks are housing or warehousing our money with no return.
Well, I think a thriving economy is the best way to build a tax base. So we can, I mean, the reality is today, 45% of our budget comes from the federal government. That's a big concern to me because we're dependent on a business partner who isn't solvent.
I'd like you to investigate it further because it would reduce overall taxes to all citizens and businesses having a state bank, state chartered bank.
Yeah, sure.
You'll be surprised what I thought about. To answer your question, the Dutton State Bank is soon to open. Anyway, corrections, Department of Corrections. We have an issue there that all my local taxpayers, or all my bosses, as we like to put, paying for holding corrections. The legislature says we don't want to build anything, we want to, I don't know what they want us to do with them, but they sit in local county jails. Last legislative session, they decided that we were making too much, specifically me. When I say me, I mean my bosses. We were making it $92 a day, and they read that Sheriff Cook, and a friend of mine, was giving me a rate of $65 a day. That didn't include the transportation costs, that didn't include mental or medical, dental, vision, all of those things. So it wasn't real apples to apples. They cut us back to $69 a day. And yet we hold probably 25 to 30 of them at $69 a day. Our population is 124 today. We can cut that down into the 70s. It'd still be too high, but not at the critical point it is. Now, you've got 56 sheriffs that are going to be looking at you saying the same thing I am. Department of Corrections is trying, but the legislature has got together and said they moved that financial burden to the local. Said, well, we fixed it.
Yeah.
You didn't. You made taxes higher for the local people, and the sheriffs were frustrated. Because we represent these people, we have to go ask with our hat in hand, please help for money. When we get shot down, and we're trying to get help from the legislature. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. It's an area I'm coming up to speed on. It's part of the reason why I asked Leslie Robinson to join my ticket. She's been a county commissioner in Tulsa County for 11 years. As I travel around the state, I've now had interaction with every single county commissioner in the state at some level. Met with many of them. I haven't met with all of them, but I've had interaction with them all. And I hear the same thing over and over again. I've asked Leslie to be our administration's liaison to local government, and also represent agriculture here in Helena. So we've got to figure out the funding formula, because I hear over and over again from county commissioners, the money just isn't there to get this stuff done. I do think there's also some 3 to 5 yard plays related to reform and corrections. Georgia's done some very interesting things to help to have alternative recovery paths for nonviolent criminals, and they've significantly reduced their incarceration rates through a series of programs. I don't know that they all make sense for Montana, but I think there's some ideas there. Other states have led here. We need to look at both sides, both the funding and how we actually do corrections and how we get people back on the street as productive members of society, as long as we don't jeopardize public safety. So I'd love to get your input. Maybe we can.
Thank you.
Johnson.
One more.
Okay.
Anybody else? Go.
Yes.
In North Dakota, the Republican candidate, Doug Burgum, who is entrepreneur
Oh, I know Doug.
himself,
Yep.
much like yourself, yesterday said that he could get back his salary if elected as governor. Is that something you would consider?
Yeah, I've been very public. I will give my salary to charity, specifically into this manufacturing scholarship program that benefits vets and low-income Montanans to get trade skills. So we made that commitment when we announced back in January. So I think I'm doing my time, but I just want to say I'm all in because I love Montana. We've raised our 4 kids here, and we know we can do better. Now, it's not my decision, it's your decision. So I'm here in part just to let you get to know me. My heart is for having a thriving economy so our kids can be around the table on Sunday. And my leadership style is one of inclusiveness and deliberation and a lot of elbow grease. It's pragmatic. It's about finding solutions that actually move the ball down the field towards the end zone. And I just humbly ask for your support. My website is Greg for Montana. If you're not getting my emails, I encourage you there to sign up. And if you're so inclined, we'd love to have your financial support as well and talk us up amongst your friends. So thanks for welcoming me to Helena, and I look forward to returning.
Next week. Thanks, guys.
See you around town, and we'll actually take your And at some point, I'd love to maybe come meet with your son.
Oh, okay, great, awesome. Thank you so much. Anyway, you said your name was Paul. Thank you so much.